FriendlyJordies recently crashed out over a bunch of Australian political content creators who he felt at best was lying about him and at worst was actively defaming him. Look, if I grew up watching a major political party dramatically improve my life, dedicated my life to covering politics, got sued by allegedly corrupt politicians and major corporations, and on top of that had my life threatened, only for some anonymous or no-name leftist content creators to misrepresent my career and beliefs, I'd probably lose it as well. The context is not lost on me. This isn't about defending or attacking anyone in particular. This is a broader critique about how everyone who was a part of this conversation really botched it in one way or another. This is the perspective of someone who, after watching from the sidelines, came away with a worse impression of every single person involved. I get that Jordies was frustrated, feeling forced to react to his detractors' videos because if he doesn't, what he believes to be a false narrative gets to fester and he's undermined.
You are just actively lying about my character. I don't want to be doing this video. You just know that if you do this, people have to respond to it because if they don't, you're just undermining their credibility outright. So they have to respond.
I don't want to contribute to that issue, and I don't want to purposely misrepresent anyone. And if someone feels like I have misrepresented them, reach out to me, leave a comment, I'll acknowledge when I make a mistake. I respect what Jordan does, I like his content, but Jordan has also said that he'll acknowledge when he's made a mistake or when he can do better. And I definitely think there were moments where he could have done better. Look, this is just my 2 cents. Take it or leave it. If you like what I have to say, consider leaving a like, consider subscribing. And if you don't like what I have to say, well,
you're such a cunt.
A big issue is that everyone just got trapped on these surface level positions, with Jordan's responses actually making the narratives he wanted to kill become stronger, because for some reason, he just refused to be charitable. I get being heated, but these were pre-recorded videos, some a few months old. Jordan had time to think of a response, and he chose to respond this way, and it only made things weaker. There is a big difference between being charitable to a person versus being charitable to their argument, and irrelevant of whether someone actually has the ability to articulate the strongest version of their argument, if you act as if they did, your response will be stronger and much more effective. Let's use the EliseyPeach video as an example. She dropped a TikTok claiming even Labour knows negative gearing didn't cost them the 2019 election, and attacked Jordan by showing the ALP's campaign review and quoting a section that was meant to debunk the idea that negative gearing was in fact an issue. Jordan came back and hardcore attacked her because in the following paragraph to the one she cited, Labour found that particular political narratives and campaigns from interest groups regarding negative gearing did in fact hurt them during the election. He calls her out on the unfair title, jokes about her inability to read, yada yada. It's like we're back on the Trainwrecks podcast for a minute or two. Jordies was pretty uncharitable to the argument, and as such, we got this surface level TikTok dunk which satisfies no one and doesn't actually do that good of a job of dispelling the critique. But let's try and be charitable to the argument instead. What's its strongest interpretation? What I think she's trying to say is that when Labour or Jordan or Labour supporters like me make the claim that negative gearing is unpopular and can't be taken to an election, we're actually misrepresenting what happened, because the policy itself wasn't what lost them the election. It was the narratives and political campaigns centered around that policy that lost them the election. In theory, changes to negative gearing policy could be introduced if Labour and their pundits were able to effectively challenge the counter narratives that were previously put forward. By saying Labour can't take this policy to an election, she feels as though Labour supporters are sweeping for Labour because they know it wasn't the policy itself that lost them the election, it was the narratives around it. That Labour and its supporters are holding this defeatist mindset that in the end only served to help property owners. Now, you can disagree with that. You can think there's no way she actually believes a nuanced position like that and I'm being way too charitable. But guess what? After I finished writing this script, I checked out her channel and she had actually made a response video, and this was almost the exact argument she made. And you can still disagree with her. I think I do. We can get into the weeds of whether or not that is actually what happened. We can get into the weeds of whether it would be effective to even bring in negative gearing policy. We can have a conversation about whether negative gearing policy actually impacts the housing market as much as some people believes it does. But we didn't get to do any of that because everyone got stuck at that surface level and we got a TikTok dunk instead. She goes on to call Jordan a mouthpiece for the Labour Party, despite the fact that according to her definition, she would meet that criteria too. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure that negative gearing talking point is the exact same thing Adam Bant sent to me when I interviewed him. Obviously though, simply agreeing with a politician or a political party doesn't make you a mouthpiece though. And look, I get Jordies being angry. Why engage with someone seriously if you feel as though they haven't done the bare minimum to actually engage with the topic? I think here's a good reason, because if you are confident in your argument, why not not go at the best version of theirs? Jordan feels forced to watch his detractors' videos because if he doesn't, it undermines his position. But because of his surface level response, she had the opportunity to make another video, whereas if he attacked the strongest version of the argument from the moment she said it, this video would have been disproven before it even came out. If Jordan truly does feel forced to watch these videos, he set up this scenario where he does have to watch another video now and defend the points he could have defended from the beginning. I get that some people will still respond anyway, try and milk Jordan for as much attention as they can get, but it's also way more effective to then see that video and be able to go, oh, we don't have to watch it because we already disproved it. You could argue that because Jordan already has a video on negative viewing policy, he never needed to respond in the first place, but at the end of the day, viewers often aren't going to go to rewatch old videos or look at the source material themselves. If Jordan's goal is to ensure that his positions aren't undermined, doing these surface level critiques and refusing to be charitable doesn't actually achieve what he hopes it would, and all it does is lead to that cycle of call response being perpetuated. Jordy's response to Adu, I think, also missed the mark and didn't do the best job of effectively countering narratives that were trying to undermine him. Now, I'm friendly with Adu. We've even done a video together, despite the fact that we vehemently disagree with each other on a lot of stuff. But I will be the first to say, I don't think his FriendlyJordies video was good. And I think Jordies did do a good job of highlighting moments where he clearly made mistakes. That said, the friendless loser stuff was definitely weird.
Hiding his voice like he's the Wizard of Oz. And he still just completely gives away the game that he is a complete and utter loser with no social skills. All right, yeah, we're back again. All right, so what else were we talking about with this loser again? What a fucking loser, dude. He's so Reddity, isn't he? He's like, debate me. Sorry, it's more boring than violent revolutions. Just, what a loser. Like,
whatever, right? I don't care that much. What was weirder was the fact that Jordan seemed to get so heated, he accidentally ended up undermining himself. Jordies takes big issue with the fact that he feels Adu or other detractors takes clips of him from podcasts or live streams and uses them out of context.
You are not going to denigrate my character with a bunch of lies. And you can sit there and say, like, I'm not addressing the issue. Well, I'm sorry, but people won't fucking agree with you because I'm going through it piece by piece while you are just sitting there clipping me out of context on fucking podcasts, on fucking live streams.
I think that's fair. I think a lot of these clips were cut down way too short, and I actually had to reach out to Adu to get a link to one of the podcasts because I couldn't find it myself. I get Jordy's feeling Adu was maliciously taking things out of context. But to be fair to Adu, most of the sources for all of his videos are available in the description. He gave me the link immediately when I asked for it, and he knew that not only was I making this video, but I did disagree with his video and thought he did a poor job. He didn't try and hide anything. If you feel something is taken out of context, Adu usually does give you the tools to prove him wrong. Look, that doesn't absolve him of anything, even if the clips and sources are available in the description, which again, not all of them were. He still has the responsibility to make sure he's editing the video in a fair way, because as I've already said, most viewers aren't going to go look at the source material themselves. But this immediate framing of Jordy seeing him as this extremist, friendless loser who's maliciously lying about him for clout, I just don't think that's accurate. Even negligent misrepresentation is a fairer critique. And that distinction does matter because it looks weaselly to claim the guy who was, one, in your chat willing to have a conversation, and two, was putting sources in the description is knowingly and maliciously lying about you. Look, the immediate rebuttal is that the only reason Adu was willing to come on isn't because he's intellectually honest, but because he wanted to siphon as much attention as possible. And I'm not him. I'm not going to speak on that. I don't know. Believe what you want there. In that stream, Jordan acknowledged he's not going to be nearly as well spoken on a podcast or a live stream as he would if it was a scripted video, and that's entirely fair. No one reasonable should disagree with that. Casual chats meaningfully differ from that high effort content, and it should be interpreted that way. Of course, when you're speaking with mates, you don't have to be nearly as worried about how you say things. But when you're having a chat with mates in front of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, those stakes do meaningfully change.
Really, was it?
Severely underplays the Labour Party's role in simply looking to
open up 7 gas wells there, shut the fuck up.
when it was
See, look at that. Look at that. Half a sentence that he's just clipped out of a fucking podcast. Again, you're really just showing that you don't understand basic social cues. This is again you cutting me in a half a sentence on a podcast where I'm clearly just saying 7 gas wells as hyperbole. Because I don't remember I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. Shoot me. And so I just say, like, it's fuck all, which is the general gist that the average human being with a normally calibrated brain that has talked to a human being that they haven't forced to be in, like, you know, very uncomfortable collusion with during, like, a first year uni seminar. Like, they sit there and they talk like that. They are just, this is like a chat between mates, you dickhead. How many gas wells are in Australia at the moment? Is there like tens of thousands? It's up there. You're such a cunt.
You can do the I'm just talking with mates and being hyperbolic framing here, but 7 is meaningfully different than 116, bro. And just because the broader point and context of that clip is about you highlighting the difference between Labour, the Liberals, and the Greens, and you felt Adu was maliciously taking that clip out of context to conflate them all to be the same thing, doesn't detract from the fact that you were incredibly hyperbolic and your audience uses you as one of, if not the main way they get their accurate information. When you're hyperbolic like that, people don't always know that, and they will take on what you have said factually and literally. I think it's a fair critique for Jordan to be called out on moments like that, and I think a reasonable person would perceive Jordy responding to that critique in the way he did as someone trying to absolve himself of the responsibility to be as accurate as he should be when it's on a live stream or podcast talking to mates despite viewers watching. Jordy's isn't wrong on a macro point that if you scour enough live streams or podcasts, you are guaranteed to find moments that look bad out of context and will be used by detractors to paint an unfair narrative. It is unfair for detractors to take those clips and try and paint a narrative, especially when there are long-form videos that do highlight the nuanced positions. My critique isn't that people make mistakes when talking live or on podcasts. That's really fair and that's normal. It's fine to make a mistake as long as you're willing to own up to it, which full credit to Jordies, he is willing to do. And you know what? If I've made a mistake in this video, I'm willing to acknowledge it as well. But when there's also comments in the same live stream like this,
these hit jobs are always just like, oh, we're just gonna like get him on stream, we're gonna get him in a podcast, which is always just like so dog in itself. It's like, yeah, obviously the things that I say on here are not going to be anywhere near as well crafted as a video that we've been spending a lot of time and thinking about. Yeah, so it's kind of just a dog move to just like grab people on podcasts regardless. But even doing that, that's pathetic. That was really, really bad. That is not an indictment on me at all. That is a huge, massive indictment on your social skills.
It comes off as wanting to abdicate responsibility for the non-scripted stuff. To be clear, I don't think Jordies believes that, but there are numerous moments in this video where I think he's so heated that he accidentally comes off as believing that. If the goal was as stated, to ensure that these unfair narratives weren't able to be propagated and Jordy didn't want to be undermined, I just don't think screaming gamer words at the screen whilst you yell about this guy maliciously misrepresenting you despite the fact the sources were available in the description, and he was willing to come on and have a conversation with you, whilst you also, in my opinion, came off like you were trying to hand wave the critiques about saying things inaccurately on a podcast or live stream. It just didn't look good. And again, to be clear, I don't think this particular thing is like a kill shot or anything meaningful like that. The reasonable response, I'm sure Jordan believes, is that, yeah, could have been a bit more accurate, but at the end of the day, I don't think how hyperbolic I was really takes away from the argument. I was talking about this macro point of the Liberals, Labour, and the Greens being conflated by people in terms of how they're managing the environment, and I trust my audience to understand what I'm saying. And that's fair. Specifically, getting that well number wrong does not matter. I just want to very clearly outline that. Generally speaking, you don't want to be too hyperbolic, especially when you have tens of thousands of people who use you as one of their main sources of information are watching. But overall, the extent of the damage from that hyperbole is non-existent. But that initial comment around 20 minutes in about it always feeling a little bit dog to do, and the way that in my opinion, he did hand wave that idea that being hyperbolic can actually be a problem if you do it on a live stream or a podcast, I just don't agree with that. I think that's a step too far. Maybe I've misunderstood it, but that's how it came off in my opinion. With all of that said, I don't think most of the critiques levied at Jordies were fair or accurate. People call Jordies a Labour shill because broadly, yes, he is entirely supportive of the Labour Party, but and hear me out here, I think that's more of a symptom of the fact that the Labour Party is pretty unique and incredible. You can call me a Labour glazer all you want, but you can't ignore the reality of how incredible Labour has been for this country and how unique their history is. You can't deny all of the amazing things previous Labour leaders set up that we still value today. You can't ignore the fact that this was a party of workers for workers. You can't ignore the fact that Labour is the only party who was able to get power in its own right. Look, I covered every Labour, Greens, and Liberal policy the last election, and I gave credit where credit was due. I've interviewed Adam Ban, I interviewed Sally Sitow, and I did reach out to Liberal and Conservative politicians. I'm not interested in being right, I'm interested in being correct. And at the end of the day, I think Labour is the correct direction for this country for the many obvious reasons stated in my other videos. I get that some people get really angry with how much Jordies attacks the Greens, because a lot of Greens voters don't hate Labour just for the fact that they are Labour. They do feel like there is a clock on things like inequality or housing or the environment, and Labour just isn't doing things fast enough. I myself am now less critical of the Greens than Jordies definitely is. And you know what? There are times Jordies probably could be more charitable to the Greens than he is. But I'm not aware of a time where Jordies is maliciously or knowingly misrepresenting the Greens. There might be moments, but I wasn't able to find them and none come to the top of my head. That said though, negligent misrepresentation isn't the same thing as knowingly misrepresenting something, and that distinction does matter. There's my thoughts on the situation. Take it or leave it. I think most of what I've said is fair. I'm sure there are really valid counter arguments to what I've said as well. But at the end of the day, I just think that all of us screaming at each other over and over doesn't actually achieve anything. It's not meant to be this pearl clutch tone police type of video. I'm sure some of you will think that it is. But it just sucked to see this. It was Jordies yelling at a live stream, claiming that he was being maliciously misrepresented, with Adu typing to that live stream, saying that he was being maliciously misrepresented, with EliseyPeach making response videos claiming that she was maliciously misrepresented, and no one is actually communicating with one another. And again, you don't have to like each other, but can we at least make the arguments better? Is that an unreasonable thing to ask? I don't think so. I feel like I've tried really hard to give the most charitable interpretations of these arguments, and you can disagree with me, you can dislike me, but I don't think you can say I'm maliciously doing anything here. You can say it's negligent, that's fine, but at least then you can tell me what I'm being negligent about. If you just believe I'm this malicious clout-chasing liar, there's no conversation to be had, and it just ends there, full stop, surface level TikTok debate over. It sucks. I just want there to be some value in the arguments that creators are having, because the last thing I want is every Auspol livestream I go on to be Drew Pavlou screaming at a camera. But hey, come join the Discord, come talk about it, come say hi. Hesitantly, come let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe if you appreciate what I'm doing. I really hope that people come away from this video believing it to be a good faith critique that challenges everyone's behavior and not this clout-chasing attack piece to anyone involved. But hey, it's out of my hands now. If anyone wants to chat, reach out to me. It has been real.